I wasn't supposed to be home that day. Even now when I replay it in my head, I keep thinking, if I had just stayed 3 more days, maybe things would have stayed hidden a little longer. Maybe I would have been spared that moment. That single moment that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. But life doesn't wait for perfect timing. I still remember the sound of my car engine shutting off in the driveway. It was mid-afternoon. Quiet. Too quiet for a house that was supposed to have guests. My daughter's in-laws had arrived earlier that week, and my wife had been nervous about hosting them alone. That's why I'd promised I'd be back on Sunday. But work wrapped up early, and something in me, something I can't quite explain, pushed me to come home without telling anyone. I thought I'd surprise them. I stepped out of the car, grabbed my bag, and noticed something odd right away. The front gate wasn't fully closed. It swayed slightly with the wind, making that faint metallic creak I'd heard 1,000 times before. Except this time, it didn't feel normal. I walked up slowly, my shoes crunching against the gravel. No laughter. No conversation. No clinking of teacups. Just silence. When I reached the front door, it was unlocked. That's when the unease started settling in. Inside, the air felt heavy, like something had just happened. Or was about to. "Hello?" I called out, stepping into the living room. No response. But then I heard it. A soft sound, almost like someone trying to hold back tears. It was coming from the hallway. My chest tightened as I moved toward it, each step slower than the last. I didn't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't what I found. My wife was sitting on the edge of the bed in our room, her back slightly hunched, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her eyes were red, not just teary, but swollen, like she'd been crying for a long time. She didn't notice me at first. "Hey," I said softly. She flinched, actually flinched, and when she turned around and saw me standing there, the look on her face wasn't relief. It was panic. You're back?" she said, her voice trembling. I forced a small smile, trying to ease whatever tension had filled the room. "Yeah, finished early. Thought I'd surprise you." But she didn't smile back. She stood up quickly, wiping her face, avoiding my eyes. "You should have told me," she murmured. "That stung more than I expected. I thought you'd be happy to see me." "I am," she said quickly, but it didn't sound convincing. "It's just, things are a bit busy right now." Busy? The house felt like a ghost town. Before I could ask anything else, I heard voices from the living room. Laughter. Loud, cheerful, almost exaggerated laughter. It didn't match the heaviness in this room. I glanced toward the hallway, then back at her. "Your guests are here?" She hesitated. Just for a second, but it was enough. "Yes," she said finally. "They've been here since morning." Something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me, but I didn't push. Not yet. Instead, I walked back toward the living room. And that's when I saw them. My daughter's in-laws were sitting comfortably, like they owned the place. Her father-in-law leaned back with a wide grin, while her mother-in-law sipped tea, her expression oddly satisfied. They all turned to look at me at once. For a brief moment, the room went silent. Then the smiles came back. Too quickly, too perfectly. "Well, look who's home early," her father-in-law said, standing up with a chuckle. "That's a surprise?" I nodded, forcing politeness. "Work finished sooner than expected." He walked over and shook my hand, firm grip. Steady eye contact, but there was something behind his smile. Something calculating. "You must be tired," he added. "Traveling back and forth isn't easy." "I'm fine," I replied. His wife chimed in, her tone light but sharp around the edges. "Your wife has been managing everything so well. Hosting us, taking care of the house. She's quite strong." I glanced back toward the hallway. My wife wasn't there anymore. "Where is she?" I asked. "Oh, she just stepped out for a moment," the older woman replied, taking another sip of her tea. Something in my chest tightened again. I sat down slowly, trying to make sense of the contrast, the cheerful atmosphere here and the broken expression I'd just seen in my wife's eyes. It didn't add up. We exchanged small talk for a few minutes, or at least, they talked. I mostly listened, watched, noticed the way they kept glancing at each other. The subtle nods, the almost hidden smiles. It felt like I'd walked into the middle of a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Then my daughter walked in, and for a moment everything else faded. She looked different. Not physically, not in a way anyone else might notice, but I could see it. The way her eyes avoided mine. The way her smile didn't quite reach her face. "Dad," she said softly. I stood up immediately. "Hey, what's going on? Your mom," she looked. "I know." She cut in quickly, her voice barely above a whisper. And then she did something that made my stomach drop. She glanced over her shoulder. At her in-laws, as if she needed to make sure they weren't listening. Or worse, as if she was afraid of what would happen if they were. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just tension. This wasn't just a bad day. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. I stepped closer to her, lowering my voice. "Talk to me." She hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her dupatta, twisting the fabric nervously. I can't right now," she whispered. "Why not?" Her eyes flickered again, back toward the living room. Toward them, and then back to me. "Because they're here," she said. A chill ran down my spine. Behind us, I heard footsteps. Slow, measured. I turned around. Her father-in-law was standing in the doorway now, his smile still in place, but his eyes, they weren't smiling anymore. "Everything all right here?" he asked calmly. My daughter stepped back immediately. Too quickly, too instinctively. And that's when it hit me. Whatever was happening in this house, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. "Everything all right here?" he asked again, his tone calm, too calm. I held his gaze for a moment, long enough to feel the weight behind it. Then I nodded. "Yeah, just talking to my daughter." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Good. Family conversations are important." Family. The word felt twisted in his mouth. He turned and walked back toward the living room, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than before. I waited until his footsteps faded, then turned back to my daughter. "Enough," I said quietly. "You're scaring me." "What's going on?" Her eyes filled again, but she fought it, just like her mother had. "Dad, please." "Not here." "Then where?" I pressed. She hesitated, then leaned in slightly. "Tonight, after dinner." "I'll tell you everything." Everything. That word echoed in my head long after she walked away. Dinner felt like a performance. Plates clinked. Forced smiles were exchanged. Conversations floated around the table. Light on the surface, but underneath, there was something darker moving, like a current you couldn't see but could definitely feel. My wife barely spoke. She kept her eyes on her plate, answering only when spoken to. Every now and then I caught her glancing at me, quick, almost guilty looks before looking away again. My daughter sat quietly beside her husband, who seemed unusually cheerful. Too cheerful. He laughed at everything his parents said, agreed with them constantly. Not once did he look at his wife, not really. And that wasn't normal. I'd seen their relationship. I knew the way he used to look at her, with warmth, with pride. That man wasn't sitting at this table tonight. This was someone else. Halfway through dinner, his mother placed her fork down and looked directly at me. "You've built a beautiful home," she said. "Thank you," I replied cautiously. She nodded, glancing around the room. Spacious, peaceful, a good place for a growing family. Something about the way she said it made my chest tighten. "A family should always think ahead," his father added, wiping his hand slowly. "Plan for the future. Make wise decisions." I didn't respond, but I felt it. The shift. This wasn't small talk anymore. This was something else. Then my son-in-law spoke. "We've actually been discussing something important," he said, finally looking at me. I met his eyes. "What kind of something?" He leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. "About living arrangements." My grip tightened slightly on the edge of the table. "Go on," I said. He smiled faintly. "Well, now that we're all one family, it makes sense to think about consolidation." "Consolidation?" I repeated. "Yes," his father chimed in. "Instead of maintaining separate households, combining resources could be beneficial for everyone." I felt my wife stiffen beside me. I turned to look at her. She didn't move, didn't speak. Just sat there, frozen. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked slowly. There was a brief pause, and then his mother said it. "We think it would be best if this house was transferred to your daughter and her husband." The words landed like a quiet explosion. No one spoke. No one moved. For a moment, even the air felt still. I looked at my daughter. Her face had gone pale. "Is this true?" I asked her. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her husband answered instead. "It's just practical," he said. "You've already done so much. It's time to think about the next generation." "And where do I fit into this practical plan?" I asked, my voice steady, but only just. He shrugged lightly. "You'll always be family. Of course, but maybe a smaller place would suit you better now." Smaller place. After everything. After years of building this home, raising my daughter in it, watching her grow, laugh, cry within these walls, now I was being told, at my own table, that it was time to step aside. I slowly pushed my chair back and stood up. No anger, no shouting. Just a quiet, controlled silence. "I need some air," I said. No one stopped me. I stepped outside into the cool night, the silence wrapping around me like a shield. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing, trying to process what I just heard. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't a suggestion. It was pressure, carefully planned, slowly introduced, backed by smiles and polite words, but pressure all the same. The front door creaked open behind me. I didn't turn. "Dad." It was my daughter. Her voice broke on that single word. I closed my eyes for a second before facing her. "Tell me the truth," I said. And this time, she didn't hesitate. "They've been pushing this for weeks," she whispered. "Not just the house. Everything. Money control? Even where we live, what we do?" My jaw tightened. "And your husband?" Her silence said everything. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "He's changed, Dad, or maybe I just never saw it before." The pieces started falling into place. The forced smiles. The tension. My wife's tears. This wasn't just about a house. It was about power. I stepped closer to my daughter, lowering my voice. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" She looked down. "Because they said if I involved you, things would get worse." A cold weight settled in my chest. "And now?" She looked up at me, really looked at me this time. "Now I think it already has." Behind us, through the window, I could see their silhouettes moving in the living room, waiting, watching, planning. I took a slow breath, and for the first time since I walked into this house, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not confusion, something else. Something colder, quieter, stronger. I placed a hand gently on my daughter's shoulder. "It's all right," I said softly, but my eyes were fixed on the figures inside, because in